As Mayor of the City of Stanton, I call this meeting for May 13th, 2021 to order. On May 6, 2021, I received a request from Councilor Dole to participate remotely in the May 13th, 2021 Stanton City Council meeting due to a temporary disability medical condition that prevents her physical attendance at the meeting. I will now entertain a motion to allow Councilor Dole's remote participation in this meeting pursuant to Stanton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3.
Madam Mayor,
Councilor Claffey.
pursuant to Stanton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3, I move to allow Councilor Dole to remotely participate in the May 13th, 2021 Stanton City Council meeting due to a temporary disability or medical condition.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Robertson.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Smith, please call the roll.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Miss Darby. Aye. Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Miss Mead,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. I'll ask Councilor Dole to state the remote location from which she is participating.
1003 East Beverly Street, Stanton, Virginia.
All right, thank you. Can everyone on council and in the audience hear Councilor Dole?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a consideration of work session and regular meeting agendas. I'll entertain a motion. Anyone?
Mayor Oakes,
Okay.
Councilor Mead.
I move to approve the work session agenda and the regular meeting agenda as presented.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Vice Mayor Robertson has second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Smith, please call the roll.
Mayor Oakes,
Aye.
Miss Mead,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
Aye.
Miss Dole,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
Aye.
Miss Darby. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of Community Action Partnership of Stanton, Augusta County, and Waynesboro FY 2020 Annual Report. Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Anna Levitt with Capsule will present the annual report for FY 2020.
Welcome, Ms. Levitt.
Hi, thank you.
Hi there.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on Capsule services. I believe you are aware that we combine federal, state, and local contributions from Stanton, Augusta County, and Waynesboro to provide services supporting low and moderate income families in the region. But the majority of our budget is derived from the federal and state governments. The decisions about which programs to fund are locally driven and determined by local needs. Our board of directors reviews and selects funding recipients, and once selected, those programs provide quarterly and annual reports. They participate in site visits and desk audits, and we believe this oversight helps to enforce accountability and encourages programs to both accurately measure and then also report the impact that they're having on our community. Our 2020 fact sheet was in your packet and covers our most recently completed fiscal year that ended in June of 2020, so it's been quite some time. There's some more recent information on our current year that's on the program dashboard, which was also in your packet. Each of our funding sources has its own requirements and eligibility criteria, and the least restrictive of which, and thus the most flexible, is the funding that's provided by the 3 localities. The board reserves some of those local-only dollars to support agencies with program needs that impact our mission, but do not meet federal and state funding requirements. And those would include services to people that are making more than 200% of the federal poverty line, programs that are not able to provide the extensive demographic and income information that we require, or for items or activities not allowable due to certain regulations. A good example, we will be reviewing an application that I'm expecting any second now from the dental clinic to support the purchase of a piece of equipment that has been broken and which needs to be replaced. So that's an item that will definitely impact low and moderate income people, improve their health, but you can't really associate that with a particular outcome. It's a piece of cord, but it is definitely needed. When COVID-19 erupted last spring, we pivoted to use those local dollars to provide support to the agencies that were directly responding to that crisis. We work closely with the COVID response team that's facilitated by the Community Foundation and Dan Lehman, and we help assess and prioritize local needs. The CARES Act gave us an additional $299,000 in federal funds to allocate in support of community COVID response needs, and we have those funds through September of 2022. In addition, income eligibility for Capsule funded services was raised through the CARES Act. And so now we can fund folks who are up to 200% of the federal poverty line. What that means is that previously we could only fund services for people making 125%, which is roughly $32,000 a year for a family of 4. With this new expansion, our services can help folks who are making $52,000 a year. So it's a substantial increase in eligibility for people in our locality. The board created a separate funding process for those dollars, and we continue to review those requests as they are submitted. And sometimes we'll review several in a meeting, or sometimes it'll be a few months before we have a request. Capsule staff coordinated with the Community Foundation to develop the reporting processes for the CARES Act dollars that they received for distribution from the county and from the city of Stanton. And we work really hard to blend all of that funding as much as possible, using the most restrictive or the time-limited resources where and when it makes the most sense to do so. Our program dashboard is current through the end of the 3rd quarter or March of this fiscal year. And so far, we've provided over $469,000 in funding to programs including the Salvation Army branches, the Arrow Project, the C4 Student Support Centers, Valley Mission, New Directions, Valley Program for Aging Services, and others. Over 3,000 people have been served through both the CARES Act funding and our regular funding pool. And the final page of that report will list each program that's received funding from Capsule so far this fiscal year, as well as the combination of funds used to support those services. I can talk about Capsule all day. I'm sure that's obvious. I could keep going. Sometimes I do, but I think you might learn more about our impact by hearing directly from one of the agencies selected for funding this year. Mental and behavioral health were concerns before the pandemic, and those issues have only been compounded by COVID. 60% of respondents to our recent community needs assessment survey indicated that they or someone in their household had experienced anxiety or depression in the past 12 months. This is a significant increase over the 17% who indicated the same in 2018. So with that, I'll bring you Sabrina Burris from the Arrow Project. Capsule upgraded our CARES Act funding and our local only community support funding to help them support services addressing mental health needs. I'll be around for questions afterwards, but I'll let Sabrina take over.
Right.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you all for having me, and thank you for inviting me. I don't have a lovely speech like she had, but in the packet that was given to you all prior to the meeting was a comprehensive presentation on Arrow Project and who we are. And so I don't want to get into all of the specifics of that, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about where we came from and why we exist. So we were founded in 2018, myself and co-founder Charles Shepard, 15 years collectively working in for-profit mental health. And so acknowledging the barriers to access, the barriers to utilization, the barriers to workforce development were some of the main factors why we created our organization. And so since our founding, we have staffed over 18 different pilot programs in the city of Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County. So very unique mental health specific programs through partners such as Stanton YMCA, Boys and Girls Club of Stanton and Waynesboro, Shenandoah LGBTQ Center, and many others. When the pandemic sort of shifted all of our lives and the way that we were going to have to navigate everyday life, one of the big things that we knew would be a challenge is how we have a conversation around mental health. How do we support our community members? How do we bring them to the table and provide services? And through the funding of Capsule and Community Foundation, so over $100,000 in funding, we were able to create some pretty unique programs. So virtual check-ins, some services specific for older and aging adults. So they get to talk on the phone. We call it coffee talks. So it's kind of like having a cup of coffee on the front porch with your grandmother, right? And so they just sit for an hour once a week with one of our professionals on the phone and just have a conversation. It's not necessarily mental health specific, but it certainly helps us to know how our older and aging population are getting along. We have developed some specific programming, so groups for marginalized populations, so the LGBTQ Center, our BIPOC community, through the funding that was provided to us. We are continuing to grow our programming and pilot different programs. We are hoping in fiscal year 22 that we can do some programming with our school systems, because again, that's another population that is really in need. There's been a lot of shifts in person and virtual, and loss of learning and lack of connection to their peers and lack of oversight by their teachers and other administrative staff. So we are excited to see that grow. That's basically what I have to share. So any questions that you all might have, and then any questions for Anna as well.
Any questions? Counselor Holmes?
Some of the things that you do you help find people jobs, or, you said training. Do you try to find people jobs?
So we work specifically with folks that are in the mental health field. We do some internships with folks who are not on the path to become behavioral health specialists. But most of our workforce development really sort of centers around those who are interested in clinical work. Through our partnerships, we have certainly worked with organizations who do some workforce development, and just sort of providing them the mental health piece that goes along with the anxiety of a resume and an interview and things like that. But we don't have specific workforce development programming that's outside of the clinical realm.
Vice Mayor Robertson?
We was over at the West End and had a conversation with a lady, Yvonne, I think her name was. And do you have any stories or success stories that you could relate? And then also, it really bugged me. Yvonne was telling us a story about that evidently is an issue in our community about especially children, younger children that may have a mental health issue. And it brought a light to me, because I was not aware that it was like that, but it may go to the ER. And then you would think, if they have a mental issue, that maybe they could get into a mental health facility here in Stanton or Western State or whatever, but that doesn't seem to be the case. They may get shipped, by themselves to Lynchburg, Richmond, whatever, and their parents can't go. And it really kind of disturbed me, to be honest with you. I mean, are you helping? Does Capsule help with that kind of maybe helping placement, or?
So I would have to have Anna speak specifically to if there's funding that supports placement. I work, so in addition to being the executive director of Aero Project, I also work PRN at Augusta Health. And so when somebody comes into the emergency room, someone like me would be who you see. And so just from my knowledge of sort of how programs work and how inpatient works, we only have one youth facility in the city of Stanton, and it's a state facility. So it's very different than the other inpatient facilities where we would normally send a child, like Lynchburg or Richmond or Norfolk.
Well, I know that Amy and I were talking and talking to Yvonne and saying that, unfortunately, we don't, it's not a snap your fingers and solve it. So we were saying that we're going to at least try to go to our local rep, John Avoli, and to see, at least start the ball rolling, maybe get a conversation in Richmond going, but, just to start working with it. But like I said, I had no idea that it was actually that bad.
Yeah. And so I would say too, one of the things that is important as you're looking at ways that you can sort of shift that narrative. So any funding supports that can help prevention care, any funding supports that can help. So leaving the ER and not having to be inpatient. So can you call someone like Aero or Valley Hope or other counseling agencies and say, this individual is going to need some sort of very intensive crisis supports, but we want to have these supports in place so that they can return to the community and not have to be inpatient, would be really good things to be talking with Avoli about.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Let me ask this. I know the answer, but let me go ahead and ask, where would Aero be today if Aero did not receive Capsule funding?
Yeah, so this was a huge year for funding for us. So we're 3 years old. A lot of our initial pilot programs were done really for free for the community. I think it was very important for us to create a footprint, to know that we were here to do the jobs that we're passionate about, to create the programs that are really going to matter. And so for our first year and a half, a lot of our programs were unfunded, intentionally so. When COVID happened and we were looking at how we can create some unique programmings, funding like Capsule and Community Foundation really allowed us to pay more staff. So in our first year and a half of services, we maybe had 4 clinicians between myself and Charles, and then our intern staff, and then our volunteer staff. At the end of this academic semester, we had 18 paid staff, which is huge. So in this field, a lot of internships are non-paid for, but because of the funding that we received, we were able to pay our interns, and then our interns were able to provide more services to the community. So I think without Capsule and Community Foundation and other funders, we probably would not have been able to do the number of programs that we were able to do this past year.
Well, thank you for everything you do for the community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Any questions for Anna Levitt with Capsule?
I did want to, I'm sorry, I'm going to.
Counselor Mead?
About Mr. Holmes's question. Can I?
Oh,
is
yes,
that
go
in
right
order?
ahead. Yes.
Okay,
please.
sorry. I don't know what the order thing is. Several of
good.
the agencies that we do fund do specifically work with employment. And as part of our needs assessment process, I've been meeting with those agencies to talk about what they see as their obstacles, what they see as successes. And I specifically wanted to let you know that Mill Street was definitely singled out as an agency that agencies say that you reach out and say, we have jobs, do you have someone for these jobs? And there were several downtown restaurants that were specifically mentioned for that in our temp agency. So the things that are being successful, we are trying to recognize that as well, so we can build on that. But restaurants were specifically mentioned as places that reach out to places like the Valley Mission and Blue Ridge Court Services and say, hey, we have opportunities. Do you have someone that we can work with? And I just want to make sure that we knew that we do fund folks that work in that capacity, and there are some successes, but there are some improvements that could be made as well. I'm sorry, Ms. Mead.
No problem. I was just curious if we've had a number of meetings specifically about housing.
Yes.
Workforce housing, stay in place, housing for elderly people. Do you feel like efforts to provide that sort of housing in the community are sufficiently well coordinated at this time?
No. We are doing a lot of work, as I said, meeting with different organizations. So what I've started doing was first meeting with the agencies that we fund that are measuring housing outcomes. And then from there saying, who do we need to talk to and what can we figure out? It is similar to the mental health issue for children. It's such a huge ball that we're trying to figure out what are the strings we can pull on. The affordable housing situation is something that is rising to the top of almost every conversation. I get an email probably 2 or 3 times a week from various people saying, hey, I know someone who can afford $900. I can't find anywhere for them to live. And that to me is a big change from when I moved to Stanton 20 years ago. But that's a regional issue. It's not just Stanton. It's not just Waynesboro. It's not just Augusta County. There's an affordable housing crunch right now, which I think we're probably all aware of for sure. But there's people who are willing to work on it. It's just going to take some time.
I look forward to continuing to work with you on that.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Before we go on to item number 3, I did just want to state that I understand the CDC has relaxed some of the regulations with wearing masks. However, at the state level, it's my understanding that the order is still in place. So I'm going to ask everyone if they'll keep their mask on while not only in the chambers, but in City Hall, and wanted to remind everyone, we do have hand sanitizer at the entrance of the chambers, and we're supposed to have some hand sanitizing wipes, at the podium as well. All right, with that, item number 3, a presentation of Office on Youth Annual Report FY 2020. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, Ginny Newman, the Director of the Central Shenandoah Office on Youth, is here with us this evening to present that office's annual report.
Welcome.
Thank you all. I'm going to have to see if I can make the glasses work with the screen. techie. I do enjoy this technology. Thank you for having me here to talk about the Office on Youth again. We are a regional office for Stanton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County. And per my presentation last year, we had developed a strategic plan with a vision of a community where all youth reach their highest potential. That was brought in January of 2020. And of course, we know that COVID kind of decided to change some things for us shortly after that. Let's see if I can make it move forward. What you have in your packet is, I believe it, check the title we put on it now, The Tale of Two Halves. So what we did in fiscal year 2020 and moving into fiscal year 21, I'm going to go briefly just through the strategic plan, because that is how our commission decided that we would present the annual report to all 3 localities. So for our goals, we had 3 goals set in 3 goal areas: program goals, organizational goals, and process goals. So first off, we have life skills training and our teen project program. This is to provide all teens the skills and knowledge to reach their highest potential. We had a goal of 5 students the first year for life skills. We did serve 4. And for Teen Project 15, we served 12. One of the reasons we were unable to reach that 15 is because, if I can get this to go forward, because of little COVID there. And you will see COVID come, little guy, in and out of my presentation. Moving forward with that same goal of having teens reaching their highest potential, Check and Connect is our truancy prevention program, and we have family life education. Pre-COVID, we actually reached our full caseload for our truancy prevention program. We only have 1 worker, and we reached almost 30 students. That quickly came back down to 25. And then through the shutdowns and the schools and everything, we maintained contact with as many of the youth as we could. We are still serving 23. That is with some new students coming in. Truancy became a new issue and looked at quite differently through this past school year. But we were able to maintain almost all of the students that we originally had at the end March of 2020. Of those students that we had at that time, 68% had improved their attendance from the previous year, and 60% actually improved their grades. Some of the students that were moving into their senior year who had truancy problems, they were not as interested in the setup that the schools had. So, you know, attending school was hard enough. Virtual learning became more difficult for those individuals. So our workers worked with those students. We were able to maintain most of them, and I'm talking about 5 or 6 on that caseload, to assist them in moving more towards a GED and work tract and certifications. So they will still graduate in some fashion, but it took some time. We did have some students and some parents just say no and completely drop out of the program. Our family life education had served 81% of the scheduled youth prior to having the shutdowns occur. Our Safe Routes to School program, this is specific to Waynesboro City. It was just getting up and going with under a new grant through VDOT when COVID hit. And we did serve 138 youth. We did a walk to school program. We are continuing this program in Waynesboro City. We have engaged some conversations with Stanton City and hope to move those forward. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with the schools as far as how many students are walking and biking to school currently, how many students are being brought in by their parents. So those numbers, that kind of data, we were completely unable to collect this school year. There has been some funding changes from the federal level to the state level for VDOT, so we're a little bit unsure of the funding as it's moving forward, but we are going to continue as many of those conversations as we can. Moving on to our program goals to assure all families provide high levels and support to their children. This is mostly our parenting programs, and we offer 5 parenting programs. We met almost all of our goals for this. We actually served 201 parents prior to COVID and having to stop our programs because they were all in person, on site, usually at churches. So it became difficult for us. We only needed to stop programs for approximately 2 months. During that 2-month time, we received certifications for everything to go virtual. So we had to get additional licenses and some training, and of course, Zoom and everything else needed to be taken care of in training our staff. But all parents that were registered prior to the shutdowns were able to make up and continue on with all of their classes. So essentially, we served over 220 parents. Our organizational goals: to provide timely responsive services to the 25th District Juvenile Courts. A lot of what we do in the way our office was established is to provide services to the court service unit. So we do provide home electronic monitoring. We had to pivot in turn. We served 30 youth on home electronic monitoring and 43 youth with detention alternatives. We do outreach and curfew checks, surveillance. This is in person, and anybody that's on home electronic monitoring, we have to visit them at least 4 times a week. So we had to put some new things in place as well there. And we put some extra checks in place, retrained our staff, and began doing extra phone calls. And then with social distancing, we were able to return all of the staff to visiting all of the youth. Some other areas underneath that include things that I've already spoken about: the Parent and Teen Project, Check and Connect, our Truancy program, and the life skills training. Our For Kids' Sake program is one of our parenting programs. It is specific to a co-parenting, and most of the referrals come through the courts when parents are having a custody issue. Our goal is that all parents can be served within 30 days, and all parents were served within 30 days. Even though we stopped classes, the courts had shut down for a couple of months. So luckily, as we were coming back on very quickly, we were able to pivot to that. Another advantage to us going virtual with the For Kids' Sake program is we're registered with the courts with the state of Virginia, and we were able to register as a virtual class. We were one of the first 5 in the state to be able to do that. So we started to get referrals coming in from all over the state. So that was quite interesting and a little bit different. Instead of a Saturday morning, we do 2 evening classes right now, and looking forward to going back to in-person. Some additional organizational goals that we have. 2 things that we wanted to really work on was in this area was to reduce the workload of public funded schools and CSA, the Children's Services Act personnel, to utilize the public funds more efficiently. So in some ways to do that, we wanted to establish a multidisciplinary team for truancy. We did receive a grant from the state under the Department of Juvenile Justice. Unfortunately, we were unable to get any of those meetings off the ground. It was a 9-month planning grant, and those 9 months occurred entirely during COVID. So we gave the money back to the state, which we actually never drew it down. So it wasn't we had to give it back necessarily, but it was something different that they had never handled before. We're looking forward to do some additional grants, but we did not stop the conversation during that time. We continued to talk with the schools about truancy and meet with the juvenile judges on how we can make this better. So the goal of this is still there, and that is to stop the students from having to go to court when they are truant. We're hoping to stop that as a prevention effort at the school level, or at the point where somebody reaches 10 days and they would be referred to the court, they would be referred to this multidisciplinary team instead of the courts. And then due to lack of cooperation, they may end up in front of a judge. But the judges are seeing an increase currently in the number of students for truancy. The other thing we wanted to do was provide family life education to the PE teachers in the schools. This is because our funding ebbs and flows drastically for pregnancy prevention efforts. And we know that the PE teachers are the ones that are the first line per the schools to do this. So we thought that would be the best way. We did complete for Stanton City and Waynesboro City a single curriculum for the 2 school districts for family life education for 4th through 10th grade. That should have been launched this school year, but family life education was not completely approved as something to do through a virtual format. So we had to be a complete support to the schools in this effort. And I think that this goal, obviously has now become with the PE teachers, needing some additional training, some of them, not all of them, but in these types of curriculums to address questions in the sensitive areas has come to light. So we'll continue on with that as well. Part of our process goals to continuously review and improve program implementation. Again, we did complete the family life education curriculum review. We have also met with JMU, the Appalachian Replication Project, which is looking to replicate evidence-based family life curriculum throughout the Shenandoah Valley. So we will continue to discuss that with them and help work toward making a full evidence-based curriculum in the schools. And all of our staff with COVID were able to meet additional trainings and webinars. There was a little advantage there to COVID. Improve the impact of our current programs and community knowledge of the Office on Youth. Myself and our program manager were able to meet with all of the staff, see all of their programs in person prior to COVID, and then worked with them on additional training and training needs through the past year. We also had to impact the community, which you can see on the other half of those 2 halves. We worked with the school systems to distribute meals, masks, parenting tips. We updated our website with all local resources and information continuously, as well as our social media pages. We worked with mental health. We worked with Arrow Project as well on that. But we worked to get mental health information out to the parents on how to talk to their children about COVID and the shutdowns. We also assisted with graduations. We developed videos online for parenting tips and tricks to help through this as everything kept pivoting and turning. We helped with clothing drives and distribution of clothing and hygiene products to low-income youth and their families. We continued to support the Stanton High School SAD Club by covering their registration and fees to participate in the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. So they had a 2-day training that they participated in, and we are still working with them. And we worked with the United Way as well. So through COVID, we were very, very busy. I'm very proud of our office staff that they were able to make those shifts very quickly. We were not the staff that just worked from home. We did have some staff that teleworked, but we're out there with the youth, we're out there with the families, and we're really looking forward to additional times now when we can do more of this in person. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any questions? Counselor Holmes?
Yes. How old does this go up to? Is it up to 17, 18 or?
Yes, so the majority of our programs serve youth 12 to 18. We have had some 19-year-olds, but usually they're still in high school. Our parenting programs, currently we serve parents and or guardians. We added a program through COVID for 0 to 5. So now we can serve parents or guardians who have children in their care from birth through age 18.
That some of them dropped out. They didn't drop out of school. They just dropped out.
No, they dropped out of our program. I'm sorry. Yes, they dropped out of our program. We do not know their status currently with the schools. We do know from research and data that's coming from across the country that there is a lot of speculation that when school comes back this fall, that there's going to be a loss of students. And so our program will be there to assist the schools again in helping to work with those families and those students to get them back to school or some alternative programming.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds like the Office on Youth has had to reinvent itself over and over throughout the pandemic.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for everything
Thank
you
you,
do
Jenny.
for the
Thank you, ma'am.
community.
Mayor Oakes,
Yes.
I would just like to make one comment. Having worked with Ms. Newman in the Office on Youth for many years, as well as with Capsule and Ms. Burris, we are just very fortunate as a community to have these agencies and the work that they do, because they really do benefit so many of our citizens and youth every single day.
Thank you, Councilor Darby.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is item number 4, a presentation of the quarterly financial report. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor and members of council, knowing how much you all enjoy the Phil Traer show, we've arranged for a double feature this evening.
He's a star.
Mr. Traer will handle the next 2 items.
Welcome, Mr. Trayer.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of council, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Tonight, we're here to report on FY21's third quarter unaudited postings of revenues and expenditures. Year-to-date revenues posted through March 31st, 2021 total, I'm getting ahead of myself, huh? I'm sorry.
I thought your presentation was about the budget amendment.
Yes, okay.
Okay, just keep-
39.7 million or 59.8% of the annual appropriation. In FY 2020 through the third quarter, posted revenues were 36.7 or 58.1% of the annual appropriation. Even though we're 75% of the way through the fiscal year, 59.8 is actually a little above normal given the timing of major revenue sources such as real estate tax revenues.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you.
I don't have, you did not prepare a presentation for this part, correct?
No, we have that within the,
Yeah, this is the material you received in the packet. And so the next item about the budget amendment is this PowerPoint. So
Okay, which is item number 5 on the work
Yeah, sorry about
session.
that.
And, oh, no,
Yeah,
that's all right.
okay.
And item D on the regular meeting agenda.
correct.
All right.
I do have a lot of PowerPoints, yes. Okay.
That's all right.
Ellen Dahl, are we doing the quarterly financial report? Is that what we're on or what?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In addition, COVID revenues received by the city have been appropriated and posted, which have also skewed dollar and percentage variances. Local taxes of interest, sales tax up 36,000 over same time last year, which is remarkable. We're $594,000 over forecasted budget. Meals tax are down 180,000 over same time last year and 630 over forecasted budget. Currently, the city is trending close to 2019 levels in this area, slightly below. Lodging revenues are down 239,000 over same time last year, $100,000 below forecast, and the city is trending at 2017 levels in this area. On the expense side, we have posted $44.1 million of expenses, or 66.5% of the annual appropriation. From a percentage basis, this is fairly consistent with prior year expenditures. At the end of the third quarter in FY 2020, we had expensed $41.3 million, or 65.5% of the annual appropriation. On a dollar basis, we're looking at an additional $2.7 million being spent over same time last year. The vast majority of this variance can be attributed to the expense associated with CARES Act funding. $2.7 million is roughly the same amount we reported on our last quarterly update. On the golf front, we have posted revenues through March 31st of $127,170. We have 15 paid memberships made up of 7 seniors and 8 members of the Riverheads High School golf team. Golf rounds, and not actual players, 7,520 rounds, with 3,683 coming from the Stanton zip code, or 49% of the total rounds played in FY 2021 through March 31st. We have operating expenses of $65,581, prorated overhead allocation for 9 months of $219,000. Debt service postings are finished for the year and they equal $29,081. And we have a net loss after overhead allocations and debt of $186,983. FY 2020, as a comparison, we had revenues rather of $88,000. Operating expenditures of $79,500, overhead allocation of $241, debt service of $28,000 and a net loss of $260,000. Finally, we do have a quick update on American Rescue. It looks like the city will be getting just under $13 million in support. Guidance was received earlier this week, and staff and the auditors are reviewing this documentation, and we will look to provide council with additional insight in the coming weeks. Again, the funds are to be spent through December 2024, which is actually FY25, except infrastructure. Infrastructure expenses need to be obligated by December 2024 and spent by December 2026. So we picked up 2 years there, which is going to be desperately needed. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and just for a point of clarification, this is the presentation of the quarterly financial report
Yeah,
under number 4.
Yeah.
So, Vice Mayor
I
Robertson.
just, Phil, I just want to make sure I understood. You, the one thing stuck out. You said there was a fairly below what we, as far as meals tax. Is that, I mean, is that during the time period that we stopped doing dine out? Or is that also picking up the time right now where a lot of restaurants can't even get employees right now because?
This is through March, and we are comparing back to last year's same time. And COVID actually took hold right at the beginning of March last year. So it's almost a apples to apples comparison through March anyhow. But we're still well ahead of our forecast, and we're like at 2019 levels right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you. Now we'll have the presentation for item 5 on the work session agenda and item D on the regular agenda, which there will be a PowerPoint for the audience to be able to follow along with.
Sorry for my confusion.
No, it's all
Okay.
good.
It's a pleasure to be back tonight. We are here to introduce budget amendment number 5 for FY 2021. Budget amendment number 5 totals $5,129,104 and is broken out between city and schools as follows. The city portion is $838,877. The school portion is $4,290,227. The majority of budget amendment number 5 is centered around the receipt of additional state and federal support received by Stanton City Schools, as well as a recognition of earned interest on the high school bond proceeds, which exceeded the original budget amount of $300,000. These funds are proposed to provide the funding for the Stanton High School tennis court project located at Montgomery Hall Park. Before we jump into the schools, we will go back to the city now, and we'll go through area by area for the city. Slide 3. As mentioned in the previous slide, the city portion is $838,000. Item 1 on your budget memo outlined general fund portion of the city budget amendment, which totaled $195,000. $123,600 is for street maintenance. This amount is a carryover of FY 2020 state funds, which are being rolled into FY 2021. We had $32,275 for police recruitment and retainage program. This amount is being recognized in FY 2021 as the funds have been received. We will carry this amount over, however, into FY 2022 to support the salary adjustment for the police department, which has been incorporated into the FY 22 budget. We have a $20,000 award from the U.S. Marshal Service for Joint Task Force Operations, and we have $19,464,000 for newly awarded grants, insurance recoveries, and recognition of donations. This includes $11,000 in horticultural grants, $2,000 Capsule Library Award for a circulation laptop, and a bursar award for air monitors, as well as $3,700 in insurance recoveries. Item 2. The grant fund credit of $1,330 is a reclassification of the forestry grant appropriation into the general fund to match up where the actual expenditures occurred. Item 3 is an appropriation request for the Blue Ridge Court Services grant of $101,000 from Department of Criminal Justice Services for a pretrial expansion grant. Council voted to authorize this on February 25th. Item 4, we had a CIP fund appropriation of $119,000 for additional revenue received from the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Transportation for street paving. This money was actually received in late FY 2020. Item 5, water fund appropriation of $15,793 for insurance recovery for a damaged pump, insurance recovery for a damaged vehicle, and a grant award for air monitors from Bursa. Item 6 is environmental fund credit of $372 to true up the actual amount of the litter control grant. And item 7 is a bond fund appropriation of $409,000 to recognize the amount of interest received above the budget amount from the high school bond fund. We will spend a little bit of time on this on slide 7. Slide 4 provides a summary of the general fund appropriation discussed above by funding source. We have the street carryover of $123,000, insurance recoveries and donations of $3,697, additional grant funding, U.S. Marshal Services, $20,000, police recruitment, $32,300, Susan Blakely horticultural grant, $10,000, grants total $68,042. Slide 5 provides summaries of appropriation requested for CIP funds, the grant fund, Blue Ridge Court Services, and the water fund. Again, all of these were reviewed on slide 3's discussion, and this slide sort of provides a summary of the individual elements within the budget appropriation. And slide 6, we have the $372 true up the grant control, or the litter control, and the $409 interest, which leads us to slide 7. As part of council's approval of Stanton High School construction project, the city utilized the state-sponsored bond proceeds via the Virginia State Non-Arbitrage Program, or SNAP. The state enacted the SNAP program in 1989, and this program is sponsored by the Virginia State Treasury Board. Under this program, bond proceeds, which have been issued on behalf of localities and school systems and have not been drawn down for expense reimbursements, are managed and invested by a fund manager selected by the state in highly rated short-term investment money market funds. Keep in mind that once the city applies for and receives monies, bond monies, the entire amount is funded into an investment control account by this financial and controlled by the financial investor, which is PFM Fund Distributors. And these monies are invested in state-approved money markets based upon drawdown estimates provided by the city during its bond applications. Proceeds of these investments are considered tax exempt, provided the city meets spend down thresholds provided by the state. And of course, the city has to spend the money on qualified expenses, which in this case was the high school project. Thresholds, 10% of the bond proceeds must be spent within the first 6 months. We met that. 45% in the first 12 months. We met that. 75% within the first 18 months, met that, and 100% within the first 24 months. We met that by 3 weeks. Again, the city did meet these benchmarks, and as a result has been issued a determination letter from SNAP, which allows us to recognize the full amount of the interest earned in these proceeds. As mentioned, once again, the schools have proposed to use these funds primarily for the Stanton High School tennis court project located at Montgomery Hall Park, as well as $48,000 for furniture at the high school. So, slide 8, we dive into the schools. Slide 8, we look at the school's appropriation. We have an appropriation for additional homebound funding of $1,500. School improvement grant for the middle school of $30,000. Appropriation of vision grant of $190,884. These funds combined with the original award of $197,135 are being used to improve and expand the school's virtual teaching capacity. Appropriation of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds of $2.8 million. Of this, $1.1 million of the proceeds are being used for remedial staffing to bolster student learning after being in a 100% virtual environment for most of 2021. We have $399,000 for instructional software, $394,000 for computer hardware, $254,000 HVAC upgrades in multiple buildings, and the remaining $605,000 for data lines, vehicle replacement, curriculum development, and supplies. Versa grant for the Dixon Center fence, $3,800. CARE set-aside fund, $9,000 for special education equipment. Virginia statewide partnership for mental health, $7,000. Insurance recovery, $4,900. Bessie Weller Thacker Fund, $10,500 for remedial education. Appropriation for equity first donations at $2,550. Donation for school supplies, $100. Timothy Alden Edwards Foundation, $1,775 for school operations, and the appropriation to fund a CIP transfer from school fund balance. This entry is the second half of a CIP appropriation approved by council in December. And finally, on slide 9, CIP funds, $43,819 for school security grant to be used at Bessie Weller and Shelburne Middle Schools for radios, cameras, and badge readers. $361,700 for the high school tennis court project. The state operating fund, operating programs fund, we have $124,000 to recognize additional support provided by the state for additional instructional salaries, benefits, and tutoring. And finally, cafeteria fund, we have $25,920 in ESSER 2 funds to support the additional staffing required with an expanded summer school program in FY 21 to 22, and $760 in donations received in support of school food service operations. Be happy to field any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Mr. Trayer? All right, we're hearing none. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the next episode of the Phil Trayer Show. All right, the next item is a break. So we are now on break. We will return at 6:25.
And Brenda.
Well, I will.
All right, we are back from break. And that takes us to item number 6, an update on 2018 Virginia Dam Safety, Flood Prevention and Protection Assistance Grant, West Beverly Corridor. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, we have John Glover, the city's building official, who's here to present this item to council.
All right, welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of council, here tonight with hopefully good news. And bear with me, I'm not as fast as Phil Trayer. I read a little bit slower, but I'll try and get through it as
We
good as
might
I
understand you.
can. The flood study was funded by the Virginia Dam Safety, Flood Prevention and Protection Assistance Grant, and it has been completed. As council was briefed on March 22nd of 2018, and again on June 13th of 2019, portion of the floodplain in the city between approximately 139 Park Boulevard to the intersection of West Beverly Street and then to Morris Mill was designated by the Federal Emergency Management Agency as Flood Zone A. The rest of the floodplain in the city is designated as Zone AE. This Zone A is a mapped floodplain, but no real data is given, no base flood elevations, any of that sort of information was given. Just the fact that someone was in this A zone resulted in higher insurance premiums for those residents in that zone. It also created challenges to redevelopment and development of properties based on the fact that, again, there was no data to work on to make sure they were elevated because we require them to elevate above the floodplain. Well, if there's no data to tell you where the base flood elevation is, makes that very challenging. So it proposed it set forth a lot of challenges for those areas. As part of this study, we knew that some of the floodplain would change, the mapped area of the floodplain would change. And you can see from attachment 1 that's provided with your briefing, you can see where those changes did take place. Staff quickly identified, once we knew about this challenge, that we identified the Virginia Dam Safety, Flood Prevention and Protection Assistance Grant program, which is administered by the Virginia Resources Authority in cooperation with the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation for a source of funding for this study. At council's meeting of March 22nd, 2018, it was unanimously authorized to apply for such a grant with a required local match of 50% and our match not to exceed $75,000. The city was awarded the grant on August the 1st of 2018, and a contract was awarded to the Timmons Group to perform the study. Project commenced in January of 2019, and staff approved the draft study on May the 23rd of 2019. Staff had also met with the West End Alliance Group on March the 12th of 2019 to provide updates on the progress of the study. In the summer of 2019, as anticipated, Timmons submitted to FEMA a letter of map revision, which was the whole goal of this study, which would amend the FEMA flood maps. While this process usually takes 6 to 9 months, it was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's why we're just now finishing this up. It was, maps were updated as of March 30th of 2021. The results were the removal of 35 properties from the floodplain. 16 new properties were added to the floodplain, with a result of total of 119 properties in the study area in the floodplain. Property owners whose properties remain in the floodplain will now have better data to facilitate a possible letter of map amendment to remove them from the floodplain, or an elevation certificate that could reduce their flood insurance premiums. Total cost of the project was $129,430. And the city has been reimbursed $64,715 through the grant. As you say, I mentioned attachment 1 already, and I do have the study here available if anyone would like to look at it. And I'm ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Counselor Mead.
Mr. Glover, this is just a little thing, but in the past flood zone, current flood zone, is that a typo? 1% annual change flood hazard as opposed to 1% annual chance?
It's supposed to be chance. Yes, ma'am. That I didn't catch that. That is a
Okay,
typo.
it's okay. I just.
Yes, it is a
just
chance. Yes.
Confused me. Okay.
Thank you.
And then are you prepared, or is your office prepared to provide any information to citizens who are going to try and process their way through letters and the things that they need to do?
Yes, we always do that. That's a constant thing. And we actually sent letters, and I had that in the briefing, but I forgot to mention it. In April the 20th, we actually sent letters to all of the property owners that were affected by these changes, asking them to contact us if they had questions or needed assistance with anything. So typically that's done by a surveyor, not by the city, but we always provide assistance when asked.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Counselor Claffey.
Could you repeat the numbers on how many properties were affected, how many were added to the zone, and how many
Okay.
were subtracted?
35 properties were removed from the flood, are no longer in the floodplain. 16 new properties were added. They were not in the floodplain previously. The total number of properties in that whole study area is 119.
Thank you very much.
Probably had some citizens that were excited and others that were not.
I'm sure those 16 were probably not, but I haven't heard a word from anybody.
that's good.
So that's,
Really?
I think it's a success, but I haven't heard anything.
Well, from what I'm hearing from the folks in the West End, they were very excited about the flood study.
Good.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
Terry's first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor Holmes.
John, did they give you any recommendations about things that we could do to mediate some of the floods?
That really wasn't the goal of this study. This was just to map the floodplain, to better map the floodplain. The flood zone A was when they did it years ago, there was no real study done. It was just like, we think it might be here, and bam, there it is. So yeah, so no real mitigation strategies were provided with this study.
There was some talk about in Gypsy Hill Park, spreading the creek out there so that it could spread out further and maybe wouldn't concentrate so much downtown. The Timmons group, that was the one the Timmons group did.
No, sir, that's one we're working on now, and the plan is to brief you soon on the results of that. That's a citywide somewhat study. It's focused on mitigation strategies to reduce the flooding like we had last August.
Isn't that based on the Ellicott City thing?
our situation has some similarities to Ellicott City, I guess I would say. I don't, yeah.
It's comparable. It's a
Yeah.
comparable product to the study that was done there. It's
Long as the cost is not comparable at 100 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
Don't you look at me like that.
prepare yourselves.
Oh, no.
Gosh.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
Just repeat, John, you said it was the cost was 129.4 and we were reimbursed how much?
64.
64,000, yes.
Okay, reimbursed 64, but
The 50% match is what we were reimbursed for. So we were under budget for this. I mean, we had us not to exceed 75,000, so we came in under that.
Great job.
Well done.
This is Carolyn Dull. I wonder if Mr. Holmes was referring to the project that we have scheduled for Gypsy Hill Park, where they're gonna meander that stream to slow down the flooding. Not so much of another study, but that we had contracted with somebody.
It was Timmons Group.
So that project was put on hold after the August floods so that it could be considered as a part of the larger possible measures to be implemented based on the study that we're just now getting the results of.
Counselor Holmes.
John, when you go up Churchill Avenue, does this, wasn't there a lot of flooding at the end of Grubert where it runs into Churchill? The last
Grubert,
time or
Churchill.
the last summer?
I mean, I don't remember that specific location. I mean, there was flooding all along the Churchville Avenue corridor, all the way through Lewis Street and then into the downtown to the wharf. So, and down, I think Central even had a little bit of flooding. So I don't know that specific area, but in those heavy rains, you can have flash flooding just about anywhere, but even outside of the delineated floodplain. So there could have been. I'm just not familiar with that specific area.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's good news indeed. All right, the next item is item number 7, a discussion of amendments to Council Procedure Memorandum number 3. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor, John Blair, the city attorney, will present this item.
Welcome, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mayor Oakes. Council, good evening. Tonight's item before you for your discussion is an amendment to Council Procedure Memorandum number 3. Want to go over just the basics of the Freedom of Information Act and how it relates to this procedural memorandum. Freedom of Information Act allows public bodies, of which the City Council is one, to establish policies that allow remote participation by members of the public body in a meeting. And it makes 2 distinctions. There are 2 categories that the Freedom of Information Act at the state level divides these remote participation opportunities into. One is for personal matters. And personal matters, it doesn't define, but in effect, it would be something as if I was out of town or something that does not relate to your physiological condition. And the Freedom of Information Act allows, if you adopt a policy, which you have in Council Procedure Memorandum number 3, to allow each of you 2 personal matter remote participation meetings per year. But the other category that the Freedom of Information Act provides for is for a illness or a temporary or permanent disability, a medical condition or a temporary or permanent disability. And the Freedom of Information Act does not limit those if they're in your policy. The current Council Procedure Memorandum number 3, the change before you makes it clear that as part of your policy, if one of you has a medical condition or temporary or permanent disability, you are not capped in a calendar year as to how many times you may cite that exemption to participate remotely. The previous version of the policy, or the current version, I should say, unless you adopt this amendment, the way it's worded, it makes it sound as if all your remote participation meetings per year are capped at 2, and so this proposed amendment makes it clear that personal matters, there is a cap of 2 per year. Medical condition or temporary or permanent disability, you may participate at an unlimited amount of meetings per year, and that's pursuant to the statute. The other change that I have proposed is, and I want to read you from the Freedom of Information Act, says that the policy you adopt, it says the public body makes arrangements for the voice of the remote participant to be heard by all persons at the primary or central meeting location. And I know in some of these past meetings, it may have seemed awkward that the mayor asked that question, but that actually complies with the statute. And the reason for that is transparency. They want to make sure that everybody on the council and everybody who's physically here in the audience can hear whoever is participating remotely as a counselor. And so the second aspect of the policy that I'm proposing be amended just simply tracks that, and it says once you vote to allow a member to participate remotely, the mayor does ask that member to state their name, and then the mayor will ask the council and everybody in the audience, can you hear the person's name? And again, that's to comply with the statute for transparency reasons. So those are the two areas that I'm proposing that you amend in Council Procedure Memorandum 3, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? So, Mr. Blair, we are doing this in order to be in line with the state.
Yes, Mayor Hicks.
Are you looking for a vote tonight? Because this is not on the regular meeting agenda.
No, this will be for action at the next meeting.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is item 8, a discussion of remote public participation in council meetings. Mr. Rosenberg.
Madam Mayor and members of council, this item is on the agenda this evening at the request of Council Member Terry Holmes, and I would invite him to share his thoughts on the issue, and then staff is prepared to answer any questions that members of council may have.
Councilor Holmes.
Yes, this is Terry Holmes. I just thought we needed to put this back on the people can call in, because I don't think that when we did away with the other procedure, we meant to do away with this. And I think it's important for people to be able to call in here and talk to us, you know, or to participate in a hearing if we're having one. So I would like to put it back on with really no restrictions. I mean, like 5 minutes, just like we do if they're in-house. You know, they get 5 minutes to speak. They can't be rude, and all that stuff. And I think that would, for one thing, we're getting a lot of flack for this, and really, it's not anything that we should have to be worrying about right now. And I think that I would hope that we're all in agreement with putting it back on, because you can't still, maybe here soon you'll be able to come in here, but right now we only got like 7 people in here. You know, and we really don't even have the room for them to wait outside. And I know a lot of people are upset about this, and I think that it would be best if we just put it back on the way it was with the COVID.
So you're stating that it's not the uncodified emergency ordinance that you're considering.
No,
It's
just the public participation, you know, because people need to be able to call in if they want to be a part of a hearing. And they also need to be able to call in for matters of the public. I mean, we've got a lot of people in this town who are not able to attend meetings for one reason or another. and most people are afraid to come out during COVID anyway. And it gave them an outlet to talk to us. And I know sometimes I'm guilty of not answering every email because sometimes we get 50, 75 emails a day, and I think it's a good way for people to voice their opinions and really just maybe blow off a little steam and let us move on down the road on things.
Are there, Counselor Mead?
Yeah, I would ultimately like to see us go much further than just having citizen participation via phone. We invested $200,000 in the technology to upgrade this city council chamber and put audio and video in that should expand our citizens' access to meetings and to see reports and to do those kinds of things. And so I was wondering if Kurt could give us a summary of the capacity that we have. And I would hope that we would not limit citizen access to city council proceedings unless it goes beyond our current capacity to provide access.
So while Kurt's approaching the podium, let me say that I believe that we are presently employing some of the technology. So for example, when the presentations are up on the screens here in council chambers, they are also on the video feed that citizens have available to them presently. And if it is council's desire to proceed with remote participation, we're already talking about using the tools in Zoom rather than actually having people dial in as they did previously. But with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Mr. Plowman.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Mr. Rosenberg took all my steam here. I'm going to go through a couple quick notes I made here. Back in the beginning of the pandemic, we quickly realized that the system we had in place was not sufficient to be able to handle the integration with Zoom and the other stuff we were going to need to be able to conduct meetings during the pandemic. We had a 30-year-old AV system that was just woefully needed replacement and repairs. Budgeted $200,000 from the CARES Fund. What that got you was a brand new audio system. So all the audio sound, all the speakers and microphones, all the audio processing went from an analog system to a digital system, which gives us a lot more capabilities to be able to tap into it using new technology. You get your 4 monitors up here. You got a brand new 4K projector behind you. So you can now see the presentations as they're being given versus having to turn around or move like it had been previously here. All that video is now also available on the Zoom platform that members are using to connect. We have 2 new cameras. We have a camera in the back that focuses on the dais. We also have a camera behind the dais here, which focuses on the presenter, so folks that are on the Zoom or participating can see the members as the council meetings are going on, which is also integrated in and through Zoom. All of the video you're seeing is all run through Zoom platform to be able to share that. Which now that it's all digital gives us the ability to actually integrate it. So our audio, our video is all controlled through a couple touch screen panels, one up here at the clerk's office, one back here where we're pushing buttons. So we can control what's going up on the screen, what presentations are going on, and what's being actually shared out over the Zoom platform, as well as our education and government access channels on both Comcast and Shentel. We did some upgrades on that. We're hoping soon to be able to do video feed that would be out on Zoom also to be able to go out on the PEG channels instead of just the audio. So we're trying to integrate even the video component further out for the public. The Zoom platform is kind of one of the pieces that ties all this together. We have the Zoom webinar platform, which gives up to 500 people participating in a Zoom meeting. So that would cover most of our large meetings. If we actually had a meeting that would be larger, we could upgrade the capacity for a meeting or two. Gives the attendees, anybody who would be on the Zoom platform, either on the app, on their phone, or on a computer or on a Macintosh, you can actually see as if we're what you're seeing on the same screen here would be what the Zoom participants would be able to see. So as the presentation came up, you'd actually be able to see, they'd be able to follow along with the presentation and see the PowerPoints as if you're seeing them. with the Zoom platform, one of the things we've worked with late last year was trying to find a good closed captioning system. Zoom beat us to the punch. They actually released a integrated Zoom closed capturing feature so that as the meeting is being streamed or shared over the Zoom platform, you can actually watch the closed captioning across the bottom of the screen. It's pretty good. Fortunately, we also have another transcription service we've also subscribed to, which is even a little bit better, but the Zoom platform is really the one we want to focus on right now. And once you're on the Zoom webinar, so anybody would be connecting to the Zoom webinar, they'd be able to use the raise hand feature. So rather than having to go through, figure out when somebody wanted to participate, like we've all gone through here, you have to go through the queue every single time. If we get to a public hearing or matters from the public, somebody would be able to click on the raised hand button. We would have a list of who wanted to speak on a particular topic and would be able to go through that queue, enable them to speak for the amount of time, and then turn that back off. If you were dialed in on the phone, because Zoom does have a phone call-in feature, if you don't have the Zoom app, you'd be able to push a sequence of keys on your keypad, and you'd be able to participate as well. You'd be in the same queue. So Zoom would become the platform for all of the communications for the public. We've done some upgrades in the caucus room also. We replaced the microphones with a big ceiling panel microphone, which is really, really good in that room. We've added a webcam, so we'll be able to eventually go back into our work sessions in the caucus room. We'd be able to do the meetings from that room. And we're looking at a fairly large smart board, which is still stuck in shipping somewhere between here and wherever it was made. That will also have full Zoom integration. I mentioned we did better integration with our PEG channels, so Comcast and Shentel. We're hoping to do some improvements on that. You all have brand new iPads, which were part of this because that's important as part of the integration with the technology upgrades here. We have a new digital timer, which we'll be seeing tonight. So it'll be, you actually, instead of having a separate screen, you'll actually be able to see how long people have while they're presenting here. I did mention the Otter AI, which is our closed captioning, which is actually helping with the transcription of the minutes afterwards. So rather than having to have the clerk go through and listen and try to type everything, the Otter gives a really pretty close accurate of what happened. So it's a matter of going and tweaking some of that versus actually having to type it all from scratch. So that has really helped. And to end on a positive note, we were budgeted $200,000. We actually came in about 10% under budget. We actually spent about $180,000. So we think we did pretty good for that investment. So hopefully I answered your question.
That's excellent.
Councillor Clappy.
Could you expound on the timing of when we can get to all these updates? I mean, for instance, are we currently on Shentel?
Yes.
Okay. And with a picture?
Yeah.
And will we go to a picture first and then go to the Zoom? Or are we just going to skip directly to Zoom and will it all fall into place when we go to Zoom?
With the system we have in place, it's called a byproduct, but we've got video stream coming off the system since we're producing all the stuff for the screens. I'm taking a feed of what's going to the screens and we're putting it into an encoder, which would then get shipped to Comcast and Shentel for the PEG channels. We're having some glitches trying to connect to their system because some of our systems are now so much more advanced. We're trying to connect to their older systems for the uplink. So that's something we're looking at doing, but that wouldn't be anything that requires additional cost.
It won't cost us anymore, but when do you think we can get this to work?
I was hoping about 2 months ago. I mean, it's just one of those things where it takes a little bit to get some of that. We've been working on trying to get some of the in-room and some of the Zoom stuff tweaked a little bit to make it flow a little better. So it's on our list. We're working on that actively.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask Mr. Plowman to clarify. Today, isn't somebody able to click on a link on the city website and actually watch a video feed of the meeting?
They can get the audio feed. We've had the audio feed of the meetings for years. We're not doing video feeds.
You can click on Zoom.
We are.
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I was
So
out last week.
Zach Henry confirms that. So presently today, on the city council webpage, there is a Zoom link to which citizens can go and they can see an a video feed of the meeting presently. So it's not through Shentel, it's not through Comcast, it's direct over the internet and has taken the place of what was previously only an audio feed.
Thank you. Counselor Mead.
And I would have a question for Mr. Blair. Do you see anything here that requires an ordinance or do we have to make a law that says people can participate in this manner, or can we just, as Kurt has said, flip a switch? He was ready to do it 2 months ago.
Sure. My advice would be to adopt a procedural memorandum, which can be done through a vote by the council. Here, if the council will indulge me for 1 minute about this, I do think there are a couple of issues you might want to address, and that is, I think if you're going to allow well, first I would state, I think it is much more legally appropriate. I don't know where you're going policy-wise, but it's more appropriate to allow remote participation in public hearings, which are required by law, than matters from the public. Now, I'm not saying don't do matters from the public, but what I would say is I would not do matters from the public and not public hearings in your policy decision. I think if you're going to do one or the other, you do public hearings and not matters from the public. But again, it's a council procedure memorandum would be my advice to pass a new one.
So
I'd like to see that procedure memorandum drafted.
that's something that.
Vice Mayor Robertson.
I'm sorry. That's something that we could then talk among us, have you something that maybe we can take a look at it and further at the 27th, correct?
Correct. I can draw up a council procedure memorandum but I think one thing I guess I would like to know if that's where the spirit of the council is headed, do you want it to address both public hearings and matters from the public?
I would like for it to be both. If we can agree on that, yes, I would like for it to be both matters from the public and for hearings.
It can be drafted. I know that on the 27th of May, we're planning on discussing all of the procedure memoranda. So at that time, we could certainly review it.
See, I would like to get it done.
I'd like to see this
I'd
done
like to see
sooner
it
rather
done.
than later.
Well, we want to give our attorney time to develop the policy for us to vote on for all the procedure memorandum at the first meeting in June.
I would like to go ahead and caused a lot of angst among everybody. I think we should go ahead and deal with this and then and get it out of the way, because we're going to have a lot to deal with there anyway when we that meeting. So I would think it would be better to go ahead, and I don't see any reason why we can't. I think John could knock this out, and he's probably already got it knocked out.
Well, it is my belief when we go over all the different procedure memoranda that we need to review all of them at the same time and then vote on them at the following meeting, which will be the first meeting in June, because there might be some additional considerations by other members of council.
I'd sure like to know what some of those additional considerations might be.
Well, as Mr. Blair had sent out an email asking for the council to consider the different procedure memoranda, I am sure that the council members will be happy to provide and discuss their future considerations for the procedures for the council.
Those are for the existing procedures.
Well,
Not-
no, those could include additions, subtractions. Am I correct,
If
Mr. Blair?
there's anything new, I will to go back to Mr. Rosenberg's Hollywood theme about Mr. Trayer and the Mr. Trayer show. What I will do is give some coming attractions. It's my intention to have to propose 2 new policies for the council's consideration, one being a Freedom of Information Act policy and one being just a meeting policy. The meeting right now, it's in the ordinance, it's in the charter, there are different aspects. So I thought it would be helpful for all of you to have one meeting policy. But to answer I think all of your questions, I will also have a draft remote participation by citizen policy for your review at the May 27th meeting. I will draft one of those.
It just seems we have, I haven't counted recently. Do we have 14 current procedure memorandum? 15?
Yes, ma'am.
So we're talking about reviewing 15 memorandum at the same time, adding citizen participation, adding FOIA. So that's what, now we're up to what, 19? 18 or 19? And we're going to, I just think having them all at the same time, it sounds like a good thing, but it sounds like something that's going to take an awful lot of time.
Mr. Rosenberg, can you schedule the proper amount of time for us to review the various procedure memorandums at the next meeting for May 27th?
This is Carolyn Dole.
Carolyn?
I had a question for Mr. Plowman. Just verification that I think what he said is great, and using the Zoom platform, that's why we have technology, is to use it. But won't that go pretty elegantly? Couldn't that be on our city Facebook page? From Zoom straight to Facebook. I think it'll work that way.
There are some things that we are evaluating. We're not prepared to make those kind of changes yet. We kind of like to make sure we're walking before we're running. So if we can get on the Zoom platform, Facebook wouldn't necessarily give the ability to get the public comment back into council during a meeting. You may be able to have their own Facebook chat while it's going on, but council isn't going to be able to see that real-time feedback. So we would like to get a couple meetings, at least we focus on the Zoom platform as our initial mechanism. We're also pushing this out to all the other boards and commissions throughout the city. So we're trying to get everybody up on the Zoom platform so that there's one consistent mechanism for the public to be able to engage with city departments and city meetings and boards.
Well, I think it sounded like you've got it, kind of under control, and it seems like an elegant solution. But I did have that one question, because I know for folks that use Facebook, that would be an easy place to go to our Stanton Facebook page, just to watch and listen. Maybe they didn't want to speak. I don't know. So that was one question I had. The other one is, I think if you only spent 10 minutes per memorandum, you're talking about maybe three or 4 hours just on them. So just FYI, that seems like a long time. And my last comment and question is, if we're going to have Mr. Blair create council memoranda for the next meeting to vote on this remote participation, can we just have an informal temporary motion tonight to vote on, saying we will allow them to call in and put a number out there so that they could do it? Because we have four public hearings tonight. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, saying, is that doable?
Mr. Blair.
Councilor Dole, it is doable. That's at the council's discretion. If tonight you want to make a motion to allow call-ins for those public hearings, that's at your discretion. One thing I would advise is that, again, if you're going to do it for one public hearing, you do it for all four public hearings. You do not allow it, one or the other. You would be consistent across public hearings if that's the council's desire for this evening.
It would make sense to have it for all of the however many public hearings. It's at least four, and the matters from public.
Great. Are there any additional comments?
Are you looking for a motion? Mayor Oakes?
No, that's up to you.
I'd like to make that motion then. I'd like to make the motion that we invite the public to phone in their comments for both the public hearing and matters from the public, and that we do that tonight.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I would second that, Mayor Opes.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? I have a concern that this is being rushed at this point. I believe that it needs to be properly set up. Mr. Plowman, would we be able to flick the switch and be able to have this
For your next meeting,
For this,
for this meeting
for
tonight?
tonight's meeting,
Yes.
we haven't published any of those links. We don't have anything set up for that, but we
Okay.
will certainly be ready to do next week or next meeting if that's what your desire is.
Well, just a clarification, we're not talking the whole Zoom thing. We're saying if we could put out a phone number at the beginning of the regular meeting or put at the end of this meeting and the beginning of the next one, just for people to be able to call in, not the whole Zoom thing tonight.
If the question is, can we set up the same phone bridge that we have used in the past using that same number? Yes, we could have that set up.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Smith, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Robertson,
No.
Miss Mead,
aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Claffey,
No.
Miss Dole,
Aye.
Miss Darby. No. Mayor Oakes,
No.
motion fails.
All right, that takes us to the next item, which we're now on break.
Madam Mayor, can I,
Yes.
before we go to the break?
Certainly,
um,
Mr. Rosenberg.
I'd like to get some clarity. We don't have a policy prepared for you this evening to act on during the regular meeting because we wanted the sense of council before there's Mr. Blair's time and staff time spent on the development of a policy. So it would be helpful to have a sense of council's direction on this issue, whether a majority of council would like us to move forward with the preparation of the policy. And if so, whether you would like to see it on the work session agenda only or on both the work session agenda and the regular meeting agenda.
What is council's pleasure?
I definitely would like you to work on it. I mean, because I want to see what the presentation is going to be.
I agree.
So by all means.
Well, basically, we want, excuse me, it's Terry Holmes. We want them to have 5 minutes to talk, just like somebody that was in the audience. They got to give their name and all that kind of stuff, and no foul language, no pointing their fingers at anyone.
Certainly, it would be under the same rules that apply to any other public participation. But what I'd like to know generally is whether it's the sense of council to move forward with the preparation of that sort of a policy.
Yes.
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 And would you like to see it only on the work session agenda or both on the work session agenda and the regular meeting agenda for consideration?
I think it should be on both because basically all we're doing is adding what we were doing before. It's not like we're changing anything. It's just giving people the right to call in and call in on hearings. It's not, I don't even think we should limit, other than everybody have 5 minutes, but I don't think we even should limit the time. Because, if we do that, we're going to have to figure out some system between who's in the audience and who's on the phone to make it fair. So, and at first it'll probably be a lot of calls, but then after that, I'm sure it'll settle down.
So I appreciate the comments, Mr. Holmes, and I'm trying not to dive down into the weeds here, but just ask the big high level question, whether you think that you all might be in a place where you're ready to act on it on the 27th,
Thanks, Mayor.
in which case we would put it on the regular meeting agenda.
I for one would like it on the work session agenda. I want to talk about it. For one, this counselor does not have a problem with people calling in. I do not have a problem. I'll state it right now. But I would like to work on it, talk about it. And yes, unfortunately, Mr. Holmes, I may add some changes. And then when we can come in and we talk about it then we can vote on in the first week of June, that first meeting in June, we can, because we're going to vote on everything and set a policy that goes forward from that day forward. That's just my take on it.
I'm in agreement. Counselor Holmes.
Are we going to have different rules for people in the audience and people on the phone, or it's going to be the same?
Well, that's what would be
That's what we're
part
going
of
to
the
talk about.
discussion.
That's what we want to talk about. I mean, I'm willing to, I mean, Terry, I'm trying to work with you.
I understand that. I'm just saying that, you know, I've been on council for 6 years, and that's the way we've always handled matters from the public. And I don't know why. I can't see anything that you would change about it.
I think somebody, but you know, as far as fairness goes, no, absolutely. There should be, in my way of thinking, there should be no difference in what somebody can do here in council chambers and what they can do out in TV land or whatever, Zoom land. I mean, that's only fair.
Councilor Meade.
On April 8th, when the codified ordinance was, or the uncodified ordinance was repealed in its entirety, we spent less time discussing the other options that were presented in that meeting. So I don't understand what all of this discussion is needed for. We have had, it's a simple policy. We should discuss it and then vote on it and give people back the access that they've had to this city council for years. And so I feel very strongly
And if you have,
that we need to give people access. We need to return access to the citizens.
Councilor Holmes.
I was going to say, if we have some differences, let's talk about it right now. I mean, I can't see that there's that many differences.
Well, I don't know that all the council members are prepared to talk about it in the next few minutes. Councilor Claffey, did you have a comment?
When we return to the previous, before the uncodified state of emergency we didn't have any public calling in for hearings, did we?
No.
No, but you had plenty of room for
The
people.
only time we've had them is during the uncodified act of emergency, which has been ever since I've been on council.
Right.
But see, if you don't have room in here for people to sit, you know, they can't because of COVID. Until they change that, it makes it really hard for a lot of people to get in here anyway.
Well, that's why I think we're going to have to do it.
A lot of time, because of staff presentations, we're taking up most of these seats, or they're having to sit out in the hall. So
I don't think we're disagreeing with you on that. It's
No.
just a matter of, we might have some additional changes to add to this procedure.
This is Carolyn Dull. I would like to say that I'm in favor of basically what Mr. Plowman offered with our new technology, because we should not be a backwater city. We should not be nitpicking in terms of transparency and participation for our citizens. We have the technology now, and I can't imagine why we want to, quote, make any changes to that. It should be as equal to people who are unable to be here in person. It should be equal to those who are able to be here in person. And there shouldn't be any dispute. And in fact, any dispute between those two is going to wake up the ACLU and other organizations that will realize that we are taking away some people's civil rights, and particularly those with disabilities. So I would like to avoid that personally. And then my only other comment is that in terms of matters from the public, the most elegant solution in what is fair is you alternate. You have one person that came down to speak, and then you have one phone caller, and then you alternate till they've all had a chance.
All right, let me make this very clear. This council is not disagreeing. The majority of this council, as it appears, when it comes to reviewing this, is not disagreeing with having access for the citizens. It is a matter of giving this its due diligence and giving all council members the opportunity to make comments concerning this matter and how to move forward. Vice Mayor Robertson.
Well, yeah, and Carolyn, and with all due respect, Ms. Dole, you said make changes. The idea of having Zoom and all of the technology that is before us, it's great. And why would you even say that we're going to try to make some changes that is going to make something different for somebody that's here in the council versus somebody that's out, calling in or zooming in? What that would be stupid in my mind, because we would invite an ACLU challenge.
Well, Mark, with all due respect, the mayor said with some changes. I was just going by what she
Potential
said.
changes,
Physical or changes, whatever we want to talk about it, changes that would apply to both. Changes that will apply to somebody
Absolutely.
here, and also changes that would apply to out there. And I guarantee you, Ms. Dole and Ms. Mead, the way that things are going, if we miss one little thing that's not just right, you will come down on us like a, yes, ma'am, I know exactly what you're saying. If we miss one little iota, we don't cross one T and dot one I, you're going to be here yelling bloody murder. So
This is Carolyn Dole, and I want to just add that we've all had a month and a half to think about this issue. I don't need to delay giving people their right of free speech any longer.
Well, we are not denying anyone's right to free speech. That is why we are going to discuss the matter of bringing back the calling. We need to be able to discuss it as a council, and we need to give it the time it is due. We need to give it due diligence. And this will give every council member that would like to have input on this matter, whether they want to create any sort of changes or not, the opportunity to do so. It is now 7:15. I am now calling the work session closed. We will come back at 7:30 for the regular meeting.
There's some